The 5-gallon bucket or pail is a classic for all preppers, at least to my knowledge. I don't know any prepper that doesn't have a few dozen 5-gallon pails. Now, these bucket systems do come in different sizes. You know, 2-gallon, 3-gallon, 4-gallon. The most common, and I think the standard, would be the 5-gallon. I have certainly seen the 6 and 7-gallon, and I've only seen one time the 8-gallon. But typically speaking, though, this 5-gallon is really what fits most people's needs. It's the right size for most people. When you fill this up, it can be pretty much as you would want to carry. And so for the average human, this is a really good size to ratio to our bodies and to our strength. And when we talk about these 5-gallon buckets, though, it's really hard not to talk about the Gamma Seal lids. Now, I've been I guess you could say that I promoted them in the past. I wouldn't say that I went out of my way to promote them, but I definitely have brought them up. Now, the way this works is there's the seal in there. There's a gasket, if you will, in between these pieces, and it goes in there, and you just push down, and it locks in. And I don't have a problem saying that these are good products, but sometimes they're not, as you can see here. Here's the lid, and it just has like a threaded side, and it just spins and just threads in, and it locks in. And now, of course, it's supposed to be airtight, leak-proof, and what else does it say? Airtight, leak-proof. That's all it says. Okay, so that's what it's supposed to do. But as you can see right here in front of us, there's a big crack. And you may ask, what happened? Well, I didn't do anything to this. I keep a small storage or surplus of items just in reserve. And I had some of these Gamma Seal lids. And they were never used. And they weren't stacked on any type of item, or they weren't under items. They were just by themselves on a shelf. And it was really disappointing to come back and find these in this condition. It almost kind of looked like that there could have been just maybe a little bit too much tension when they poured this, and it ripped over time. I'm not really sure what it is that's the problem. I'm not knocking this product because this happened to me. I know for a lot of people, and I've talked to people personally that have had these lids for many years with no problem. But I will say, though, that there has been some issues in the past few years with quality control. I have contacted the seller that sold me this, and they admitted that they've been having some problems in the past few years. There has been a few batches here and there that were just not made well for whatever reason, and they were more than happy to make it right. So at this moment, they're supposedly sending me replacements for the ones that are cracked, because I don't have the same problem with other ones. They're actually in use, which is kind of funny. The ones I'm using are having no problems, and the ones that I had in storage as a surplus have problems. So it makes me kind of think that there was a batch, because all the ones that have cracks are the ones from a certain order that I bought at the same time. And so this does not probably reflect totally on the quality of the item in its entirety. It's just a snapshot of this particular batch had a problem. It might have been maybe too thin here, or maybe there was a stress fracture that I didn't see, or they didn't see when they made it, and they didn't have a chance to pull it. Maybe there was just too much, I don't know, some tension there. But it does look like it's kind of pulling apart. And so at least the company, and I'm going to make a follow-up video on this, the company, and I'll let that be known once they, fix this problem of their service and everything. But I'm sure that it'll all work out. But the Gamma Seal lids, in theory, and from most people's experience, work pretty well. So they seal up here, and once again keeps the air and moisture out. Of course, you don't want to rely just on the bucket and the lid, because plastic it's not extremely porous, but it is somewhat porous. So you definitely want to have a real barrier in between the item and the plastic. So that's just something to consider. And once I get the replacements, though, I'm going to try to epoxy and do experiments and see how I can fix this crack. The crack is pretty bad. It really is bad. And so it's just really disappointing. Now, I also wanted to show you, I'm not sure if I did when I first put this on here, on this particular part that has the threads, there is actually another seal there too. I'm not sure if I showed you that. I don't think I did. So it has two seals. One to connect this particular, this rim, and then one for the rim against the actual lid itself. And so, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a cool concept and stuff. I'm not saying that they're not worth it, but they're just a little expensive, you know, compared to the bucket. You know, you can get these buckets at Home Depot in different places between $1.50 to $2, but the lids, they go between $8 to $10 and more if you have to pay for shipping and tax. So you got this system, which is very nice because, as you probably know, if you get traditional lids that are kind of like almost one-time uses, because once you break the seal and you crack it open, there's a propensity for things to start cracking on the lid. At least that's what's happened to me. Now, there are some different types of tools that are made to pop the lid and decrease the chances of cracking, but sometimes they still do. Now, I just want to tell you, though, that regardless if you got a good batch or a bad batch of these Gamma Seal lids in the past, because I know there's a lot of people that have the same problem as I do. I took just 5 minutes of my time and did a Google search about cracked Gamma Seal lids, and I found quite a few complaints and problems over the last 5 years. Not like it's so many that, you know, I would not recommend the product, but it seems to be kind of sporadic, as if there's just a bad batch, like maybe every few dozen batches or something, and there's a problem. But this is some things you can do to avoid the cracking. And it seems like all the reports, it's in the same spot that I have, in the middle. And what it seems like it's from, if it's not from a defective batch, it seems like it's from these types of situations. First, they're stored in a very cold environment. And plastic in general gets more fragile when it's colder. So there's a propensity to crack when it's really cold. I don't really see a lot of reports of warping, so that doesn't seem to be a problem. And heat doesn't seem to be a problem to my estimation from what I've seen. But I will say, though, that there's a big no-no when it comes to stacking, these pails or buckets on top of each other when you're using these lids. You're not supposed to stack anything on these lids. Apparently, they're not load-bearing lids. Even though there's a rim here, and it would seem, let's just go ahead and test that it fits in there. Yeah, see, look at that. I mean, it's not a perfect fit, but it falls in the parameters of this diameter of this lid. So there's a lot of people that report that they stack them and then they have problems, you know, months or years later. But definitely don't do that. So if you're going to use this type of system, it needs to be a standalone system. And so I think that going forth, I'm not going to purchase any more of these. I'm not going to go so far as say I'm not going to recommend them, because there's a lot of people that have gotten a lot of use out of these, many years of use, and they continue to work. So I think that you just have to kind of figure out for yourself if this is worth the trial and error, and to take the chance to get a good batch or get a few lids that are going to work, and go from there. But, you know, in theory, this is a great idea. It really is great. But, for roughly $10 to $12 for the whole system, the bucket and the lid system, it's not too bad for a container that's this strong, minus the potential for the cracking here. So, I don't want to be negative, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I just want to make sure you guys know about this problem. It doesn't get a lot of attention, and maybe rightfully so, because maybe it's not that big of a problem, but it is there. It is there, and it just seems like, in my estimation as well, that this particular plastic is maybe just a notch or two less than maybe this kind of plastic found in these traditional buckets. And of course, buckets and pails are not made the same across the board. Different brands use different thicknesses. and even different numbers. This one uses a number 2, a type of polymer, and this one uses a 0.070 mil thickness. And there's some of them that use 0.90 mil thickness. And so it just depends on where you go. Now, these were the super cheap. I think these were like $1, I think like $1.50 or something like that at Home Depot a few years ago. So I'm really not going to complain about the bucket, but I've never had the buckets, and there's some buckets that I have that I've abused, and they've never given me any problem. So I don't think the thickness or the material is a problem on the buckets. I just think that maybe these Gamma Seal lids, and they may have fixed this by now. Maybe they've had enough problems. It's just maybe these were just a bad batch. Maybe these were just using old materials. I have no clue. But I just hope that maybe these Gamma Seal lids in the future, if they're not already, are kind of at the same strength and standards as, the pail itself. Because we're not really having any failures at the pail. The bottoms aren't blowing out. The bail holds up. The rigidness around the surface lip and everything here is all holding up after many years of use. I have about 4 years of use on this bucket, and it's fine. And it's been in a very cold temperature and very hot temperature. I've put loads in here that probably exceeded 50 pounds. And then you have this lid that was sitting on a shelf, never used, and it cracked. And so just kind of makes you wonder what's going on. But I'll do a follow-up. I just want to thank you for checking out the video. Don't totally write off the Gamma Seal lid, but just know what you're getting yourself into. I personally just wish that they made a metal version of this. And I mean probably more like a heavy-duty aircraft aluminum version. So it wouldn't rust, but it would give you some strength and rigidity that you wouldn't find in this particular plastic that is more fragile in certain conditions. So that's my thoughts on this. Thanks for watching.